Over in New York is where you could find the Minister of Social Services, who's leading a delegation to the 69th session of the Commission on the Status of Women. World leaders and women's advocates coming together there to address gender equality and empowerment. Our Felicity Darvile is in New York City with that story.
The Commission on the Status of Women, or CSW 69, is particularly significant as it marks the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. 3 decades later, and world leaders still report that the advancement for women and girls have not nearly been enough. There are 12 critical areas being tackled this week, including women and poverty, education and training, women and health, and violence against women. While these are global concerns, Minister the Honorable Miles LaRota says the Bahamas is no exception.
We in the Bahamas know that since 1995, there have been a lot of improvements. Yet we still have a way to go. There's still issues with the disparity in pay among women. There's still the issue of women being representative in Parliament based on their percentage of the population and other issues. And so while improvements have been made, advancement have been made, there's still a lot of way for us to go as it relates to further advancement and ensuring that there's true gender equity.
As chair of Commonwealth Women's Affairs, Minister LaRota said that when he spoke at CHOGM, the Bahamas received tremendous support.
I led off by stating that the Speaker of the House is a woman, that the President of the Senate is a woman. I mentioned that there are various ministries that are headed by women, and you'd be amazed the round of applause that statement invoked in the room. We've since have a Commissioner of Police that is a female. So clearly the Bahamas is way ahead of a lot of countries as it relates to women and the role that they're playing in leadership in the country.
Promoting women's rights means protecting our mothers and daughters, empowering our sisters and friends. And without it, those who naturally nurture and care for humanity will not be able to live in a free and fair world. From the United Nations headquarters in New York City, for the Bahamas Tonight, I'm Felicity Darvile.
Well, the affairs of Bahamian women brought to the attention of the United Nations headquarters over in New York. There are 193 UN member states, agencies, and NGOs attending the Commission on the Status of Women. Felicity Darvile tells us what our government had to say.
The United Nations Commission on the Status of Women heard that no country in the world has achieved gender equality. While the Bahamas, like other countries, pushes ahead, Minister the Honorable Miles LaRota told the UN that our country faces specific challenges.
Mr. Chair, like other small island developing states, the Bahamas remains deeply vulnerable to climate change, natural disasters, and external economic shocks. The COVID-19 pandemic struck at a time when Caribbean nations were already navigating significant challenges in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. The Bahamas addresses these realities with the aims of gender equity informed by the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action and the complementary ambitions of the Sustainable Development Goals and the Pact for the Future.
But the Bahamas has made some noteworthy achievements.
We have constructed proactive programs that support gender equity with accessible funding initiatives for women and disabled entrepreneurs with great effect on the community of small business initiatives. Mr. Chair, enrollment at the University of the Bahamas continue to rise, with women comprising a higher percentage of the student population. Bahamian women are now environmental scientists, biomedical scientists, engineers, and a Bahamian woman also served as a first officer for a major cruise line. These are but a few examples.
Minister LaRota said the Bahamas has a strong ecosystem of policy and action on women's legal, health, entrepreneurial, and education initiatives. Here at the UN, the Bahamas has reaffirmed its commitment to continue to evolve its policies to meet the mandates of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. For the Bahamas Tonight, I'm Felicity Darvile.
In other news this evening, 30% of House of Assembly representatives here in the Bahamas are women. By international standards, the goal is 50%. But why is that important? Well, because when women are underrepresented in politics, it undermines democracy, and the government cannot adequately reflect the interest of the entire population. Our women politicians are at the United Nations discussing this very issue. With the story is our Felicity Darvile.
Even though the Bahamas has not arrived at its goal for women in the House of Assembly, our country has superseded that target in the upper house. We've had 6 women presidents of the Senate in the past 30 years since the Beijing Declaration. Our current president, Michelle Adderley, spoke with ZNS News while at the United Nations headquarters in New York.
I'm very happy to say that with respect to the Bahamas Senate, over the last 30 years, woman president has actually reached a level of 86%. So we have by far exceeded that mark. And with respect to women in the Senate, with the appointment of our dear Senator Jan Major, we're now at 31%. Now, when we move over to the House of Assembly, there is the amount of women there, 7 dynamic women. However, the percentage there is 18%, and with respect to the women being in cabinet, it's at 23%. And so there needs to be additional work done to increase the participation of women in Parliament.
Senator Adderley spoke on a panel of parliamentarians at the Commission on the Status of Women Tuesday, where she shared insight on the way forward, which includes paving the way for younger parliamentarians like Senator Jan Major.
Women are definitely making strides in the Bahamas, and I'm proud to be part of an administration that is seeing women forward. And being in a place like this where you hear the strides of women still have to go in other countries, it makes me appreciate more how far we've come as Bahamian women in politics and as leaders in our various sectors in the Bahamas as well.
Cabinet Minister Lisa Ramming reflected on her own path to Parliament while in New York.
I initially started off as a police officer and ventured to be an attorney, and now a politician. The road was not easy. The road was actually not easy. However, it was worth it. Why? I didn't do it for myself. I did it for the women who think or who thought that it cannot happen, or like doors don't open for us. Doors do open. We just have to keep knocking. And you know, the Bible says that knock and it shall be open. And it never say how many times.
Well, these women are knocking and opening doors at the UN on behalf of all Bahamian women. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that women's rights are under attack. The poison of patriarchy is back, and it's back with a vengeance. But he said there is an antidote, and that antidote is action. From the UN headquarters for the Bahamas Tonight, I'm Felicity Darvile.
We've heard a lot about women's rights and gender issues, most recently at the United Nations. But did you know men also had representation at CSW 69? Well, Men's Desk Representative Bishop Chadwick James I at the time encouraged men not to misinterpret the push for women to be seated at the table.
We've always been at the table. We did not have to pry ourselves or fight to get to the table because it was, let's use the term the boys' club. Now that we have the boys' club open, the problem is we have gone blind to see the cracks that's at the table. We've gone blind to see some of the things because we've become complacent. Now that we've opened the door to the women, what women have done is, because of their nature and their nurturing behavior and who they are as a nurturer, the minute they came in, they saw the cracks that us as men left there. Being the person that they are, they decided to fix some cracks. So we feel intimidated, if I can use that, for lack of a better word, that women came to take over, women came to do this, and women came to do that. No, let's continue to work together. Let's work alongside. Let's them work alongside of us.
Bishop James reasons that with women at the table, it's more likely no one will be left behind. Still, there are more pressing issues like violence and incest that require men to band together more now than ever.
This is serious. Let's address this. Molestation, incest, abuse. Let's save another generation. Some things another generation don't need to be a part of. Let's work with us. Men, let's do this. We do our part, and we can make a difference. If each one reach one, we'll have a better nation.
Well, wife of the Prime Minister, Anne-Marie Davis, has proved to be a formidable advocate for women's rights, not only here at home, but around the world, working with government leaders and women's advocates on a gender priority strategy with a toolkit to be implemented far and wide. Well, during a special event in New York, she was honored for her work and her guidance. Felicity Darvile tells us more.
From the 2024 68th Commission on the Status of Women to the 69th session held this month, Ms. Anne-Marie Davis helped to guide the Gender Priority Strategy, which is designed to drive issues on women and girls through policy, education, advocacy, research, and solutions.
The Hunger Solutions Program is an excellent initiative that aims to reduce hunger and food insecurity, a challenge that disproportionately affects women and girls around the world. And how can we talk about empowerment when so many of our sisters are still denied the most fundamental human right, the right to food, to nourishment, and to life itself? So this is why you see how serious we are here at the GEPS Forum.
The Africana Women Working Group High-Level Initiative honored Mrs. Davis in New York during its side event on the Gender Priority Strategy Global Ambassadors Forum.
But we still cannot be satisfied with just growth alone. Not when the gap between words and actions still grows wider. Not when millions of women and girls continue to experience abuse, poverty, limited access to education, and inadequate health care. Not when climate change, conflict, and economic injustice disproportionately affect women worldwide. Our mandate is clear, you know. Our mandate in this room is clear. We just accelerate action. Our mission is urgent. Achieve justice is what we have to do. Our promise is uncompromising. We have to empower every woman and every girl.
Mrs. Davis encouraged women to keep pushing boundaries and making their voices heard like never before. For the Bahamas Tonight, I'm Felicity Darvile.
The No More campaign is a global movement to end sexual and domestic violence, and it's backed by the Commonwealth Group of Nations. From its headquarters in New York, wife of the Prime Minister, Mrs. Anne-Marie Davis, shared the story of suicide victim Charissa Culmer, showing how her tragedy is turning into triumph for other victims of violence. Our Felicity Darvile fills us in.
The No More Silence, Speak Your Truth platform provides a safe space for those impacted by domestic violence. Leaders of the No More campaign heard from Ms. Anne-Marie Davis, who shared how her own activism has led to tangible results. In 2022, young Charissa Culmer was found hanging in a hotel room in front of her toddler. This alleged suicide sparked outrage from Ms. Davis.
I was so angry at the vigil that they had for her. I stood up on the stage and I just beat up the police force, including the commissioner of police, for no security at the safe house, for not paying attention to her screams. No one is hearing. For her boyfriend who tortured her being on bail, who was monitoring his ankle bracelet. And I just went on and on and on. And the commissioner of police called me in his office and said he was going to make some changes. Everything that I called for, he was going to do it. And he did. And we are now going to open the safe house that he built to be more focused, to be totally focused on women and young girls.
Ms. Davis told the No More campaign that this is how to move from activism to action.
We are opening the new building that the Commissioner of Police started, and there's no new Commissioner of Police that we have, which is now a woman. I have spoken to her already, and she said, yes, we will be opening the new domestic violence unit at the end of this month.
Ms. Davis said that every Bahamian can take part in the No More campaign by speaking out against every act of disrespect and violence from the home to the community. From the Commonwealth headquarters in New York City for the Bahamas Tonight, I'm Felicity Darvile.
This landmass is less than 5 feet above sea level. Extreme weather events caused by climate change, like hurricanes, threatening to cause a loss of up to 5% of our GDP annually by 2030. In the face of such severe circumstances, the Bahamas today joined hands with the Commonwealth to host a special side event at the United Nations to take a deep dive into these issues. Our Felicity Darvile is there.
Here at the 69th session on the Commission on the Status of Women, the Bahamas took a lead in an event themed Empowering Women for a Sustainable Blue Future, Gender, Oceans, and the Beijing 30 Agenda. Minister of Social Services, Information and Broadcasting, the Honorable Miles Larota, said that women comprise a large portion of the workforce in maritime industries, yet they often remain in lower paid roles.
Fisheries, for instance, women are integral to processing and marketing, but these contributions are often undervalued. Financial inclusion is another barrier. Currently, only 1% of global climate finance goes to women-led organizations. This must change. The Bahamas Development Bank has taken steps to bridge this gap through Blue Economy grants that support women-led businesses in maritime industries.
Executive Director of the Bahamas National Trust, Lakeisha Anderson Roll, advised Commonwealth governments that policies must be built around the people who live and work by the ocean.
We must prioritize investing in things like oral history projects and storytelling projects, where we are able to capture and share the stories of Indigenous women. We are able to document their knowledge on sustainable practices, gather their insights on species and habitat, species behavior and habitat health. Because at the end of the day, this was a learning experience. They've been doing it for generations, and we should hone and learn from that. Learn from their practices and learn from our mistakes that we're making today.
She called on governments to make people living in the coastal communities a part of the decision-making process about ocean policies that will ultimately affect them. Women on the family islands, you who go fishing and sculling or comb the salinas, your traditions and livelihoods are important, and they're being discussed right here on the world stage. From the United Nations headquarters in New York City for the Bahamas Tonight, I'm Felicity Darvile.
In other news, women with disabilities are at the forefront as world leaders meet at the United Nations headquarters in New York City this week. During the Commonwealth's event, Minister of Social Services, Information and Broadcasting, the Honorable Miles Larota, pointed out that while their work to address women's issues, inclusion is extremely important.
We also addressed the challenges of people with disabilities and provided much needed assistive devices to persons in those communities. One such presentation was to a blind young lady on Crooked Island who was presented with a tablet which contained the acronym JAWS, Job Access with Speech Software. Permitting her to have accessibility, we continue to seek inclusion.
Vice Chair of the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum and President of the Barbados Council of the Disabled, Carrie Ann Iffel, shared her story as a woman living with blindness.
52% of our survey findings indicated climate policies do not mention persons with disabilities. Accessibility issues in emergency shelters, 67%. Cultural barriers in evacuation, limited availability of disability aids in evacuation efforts. All of these factors resonate with us particularly because they do not take into consideration our specific needs. When we go to shelters, there's no one designated there to assist us. It is always expected and anticipated that someone will take care of us.
Well, a member of the Mexican parliament singing high praises to the Bahamas for making significant strides in gender equality. The accolades came during the Resisting the Backlash and Shifting Paradigms Towards Gender Equality session at the United Nations in New York City recently. President of the IPU Women's Bureau of Parliamentarians, Senator Cynthia Lopez Castro, talked about a major women's parliamentary conference set for the Bahamas.
I'm so happy to be here with the President of the Senate, Lachelle. She has been doing an extraordinary work here in the United Nations, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be with you, Madam Speaker. And we will be planning a conference of women in Bahamas. So
Yes, absolutely.
it will be great to have members of parliament all around the world in your country, because you are one of the 22 speakers in the world that is women. So I want to congratulate you, and we will continue working because it's time for women.
Minister of State for Housing and Urban Renewal, adopting a pretty unconventional approach when she addressed the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, in the process sparking the attention of countries around the world. Felicity Darvile tells us all about it in her final report from CSW 69 in New York.
The Bahamas once again emerged as a leader on an international platform when Minister the Honorable Lisa Ramming wowed attendees with her take on the advancements needed for women and girls. They were amazed to learn that within days, our country will launch the rent-to-own program.
It is the persons who think that they don't matter to us, that they really do matter, and that this government, the Davis administration, is looking out for them. Persons who cannot easily qualify with the traditional banks, they have the opportunity to have their own home by renting towards owning that home. And so they're so excited. So all of the red tape, all of the huge qualifications that a traditional bank would require of you, that's not expected of them. So we say, come one, come all.
While those attending this UN conference were intrigued by this government housing concept, she struck a deep chord when she called on the UN not to forget the women in prison.
What about the women in prison? Incarcerated women. Do you remember them? Do we include them in the definition of women? Do these women really matter? Have they lost their right to be treated fairly while incarcerated? These women need economic opportunities after leaving prison. Are they worth being fit into the present and future role and attention of the CSW? Let me say, it should not be left to defense attorneys to fight for them. It should not be left for activist groups or human rights groups to just fight for them. They need you, CSW.
Minister Ramming shared how she catered to the women at the Bahamas Department of Corrections on International Women's Day, a touching moment where she learned how they felt forgotten and they're seeking to be able to work on parole like their male counterparts. Women from around the world came to meet her, and they've committed to looking at the women in prison in their own countries. But there are serious threats that must be overcome for meaningful progress, and the Bahamas is no exception. One of the biggest threats to all of the work that is being done for women and girls here at the UN is gun violence. From the UN headquarters in New York City for the Bahamas Tonight, I'm Felicity Darvile.
Our Felicity Darvile has been attending the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. She joins us live from United Nations reception. Felicity, how are things over there in the city that never sleeps?
Absolutely wonderful and exciting. Hi, Marlena.
Hi. And we heard that you're attending this commission exclusively. No other Bahamian press member is there. So can you tell us a little bit about how you felt about that, how you were selected?
Well, back in 2010, I started True Vision Media Group with the motto, getting good news in the news. And former Minister of Social Services, the Honorable Melanie Griffin, she heard about it and decided to bring me on to do some work with them to help to really tell the Bahamian story, the story of the women's suffrage movement, to do some documentaries, some newspaper supplements, so that people can know and appreciate and understand the importance of International Men's Day, the International Day of the Family, the International Day of the Girl Child, and of course National Women's Week and Month and International Women's Day, which was just celebrated. And so I think, 10 years later, I'm just grateful that they've actually brought me here so that I can see what it is our officials really do when they go to these international events, and it's really powerful.
And speaking of being able to see what they do, what has it been like for you to be there? What have some of the presentations been like?
I am really blown away to see how other countries really laud the Bahamas for their progress on women. This is the Commission on the Status of Women. And I think that, Marlena, we take a lot of things for granted.
So, for example, worldwide, there's about 32% in women leadership, right? However, women make up about 50% of the workforce. And so when they find out that the Bahamas actually has a woman governor general, a woman president of the Senate, a woman speaker of the House, and a woman commissioner, I mean, we may take these things for granted. It's like, you know, this just is how things evolve. However, I mean, other countries, you know, they're still dealing with female genital mutilation, of child marriage. And so the advancements we've made have really been just inspired to know that we are making progress as a country and that other countries note that.
Amazing. And when we speak about that progress, we know this year is the anniversary of the Beijing Declaration, which a lot of people see as a blueprint for gender equality. How is it being recognized?
So, because this is the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration, we have actually a large contingent of government ministers that deal with women's affairs and social services that are here. And what they found is that the gender gap in the past 30 years has been closed by about 68%. And that might sound good, and that is good. However, it's going to take about 131 years to reach the next 32%. And that's because of issues such as the COVID-19 pandemic, which was a setback, the current state of geopolitics, and of course, climate change. And so there's lots of work to be done, especially in the areas of violence against women and girls.
Well, we know our Minister, Miles LaRota, made a presentation. What was the highlight from that for you?
Well, some of the things that stood out in Minister LaRota's presentation is that he spoke about the fact that HIV/AIDS has declined in our country by about 53%, which is pretty good globally, that we have a 0% transmission rate from mother to child, that maternal mortality has decreased in our country. He talked about funding for women from the Small Business Development Center, the Bahamas Development Bank. He spoke about the fact that the woman population at the University of the Bahamas is actually higher than the men, because women know that in order to close that gender pay gap, they've got to be educated. And of course, the minister also highlighted the fact that climate change is really threatening the progress of gender equality in the Bahamas.
Amazing. Well, obviously you've gotten to see all of that amazing work coming from everyone over there, but have you gotten to do anything fun? I mean, you're in the Big Apple. Have you gotten to actually experience any of it?
Yes, Marlena, you know, because the city never sleeps, when our work is over, I had a chance to go to Times Square. I've got a chance to go to Union Square. Today, I took a brief subway ride, went to Grand Central Station, walked along Park Avenue and Fifth Avenue, so that was exciting. And right now, I'm currently in a restaurant called Fogo de Chão, which means fire underground, and it's pretty popular. And we have a lot of dignitaries here, such as our Bahamas Consul General, Leroy Major, the Honorable Leroy Major, of course, the Minister Miles LaRota, Minister of State Lisa Ramming. We also have coming the wife of the Prime Minister, Mrs. Anne-Marie Davis. And we also have great women leaders here, such as former Judge Cleopatra Christie. We have Mrs. Layla Green, Reverend Diana Francis. We have from the men's desk, Mr. Chadwick James. And so we also have our Ministry of Tourism officials. And so I'm getting ready as soon as you're done with me to go and have some fun with them.
Well, Felicity, I'm going to let you get right to it. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a little fun for all of us over in New York. Well, sports is next, so stay close.